Welcome back. So in this video, we're going to talk about if it's possible to disentangle the conversation of hormones from energy balance. This is a very polarizing and controversial topic. A lot of people in the fitness space are very energy balanced biased. They talk a lot about calories in, calories out. They say that hormones are kind of like, whatever. That's not really that important as long as you're in a calorie deficit, meaning that if you eat foods that raise glucose and raise insulin, it doesn't really matter. You can still lose body fat. And so in this video, we're going to talk about how is it or is it not possible to disentangle the two, that is hormones from energy balance. I'm Mike Mutzel and you are tuning into High Intensity Health. So excited that you're here. If at any point you enjoy this conversation, you can hit that like button, definitely subscribe so you get updated when we launch new videos like this and interviews with experts in the field. All right. So where's this video coming from? Why I'm even making this? Well, Layne Norton, who many of you know about, you've commented, you've wanted me to make a video about him and so on. Layne and I go back and forth in good fun. It's tongue-in-cheek over on Instagram. And a few weeks ago, I can't remember, I made a little meme. This is what it was. It was the end of September. I made a meme, with OAC. It was like her face was kind of like this. And it said something, when you ask a calorie counter how the body senses an energy surplus or a deficit independent of hormones. And Layne got all freaked. It's funny. He gets all fiery. And I'm doing this all in tongue-in-cheek. I think Layne's probably a pretty cool guy. I've never met him in person. He's certainly, family guy. I think he's an honest, hardworking guy, right? He's very strong. He can deadlift and squat like way more than me. So I have respect for Layne. I think he's cool. But he made this video response to my Instagram post, and he does this every Friday called Fuckery Friday, where he kind of picks apart something that he thinks silly on the internet, and I happen to be a butt of his jokes, which is fine. All right. And so, in that video, which I'll link below, he talks a lot about like how, the body can sense energy independent of hormones. He talked a lot about, ATP levels and cellular AMPK, adenosine monophosphate kinase. It's a kinase, it's an enzyme that is increased in energy deficit states, low energy states, when you're fasting, when you're exercising, or when you're in a calorie deficit. And he also talked about VLDL and chylomicrons and all that. And so let's just paint a picture here, right? To help illustrate my vantage point, and I'm not sitting here saying like I know everything. I certainly am learning all the time. I don't know all the answers. Like we can't peek inside the liver cell, excuse me. With the technology that we have, we can't peek inside the liver cell or the muscle cell, or the adipocytes at this point in time. We have to sort of triangulate, look at, energy intake. We have to look at macronutrients. We can look at body composition changes. We can look at blood work, but we don't know what's going on unless we do proteomic or metabolomic or genomic studies, like within the cell, where we can see microRNA changing and genes being turned on or turned off, right? So anyway, the point that I was trying to make is, and here's an example. Let's say we have 50 grams of pure oleic acid. We ingest 50 grams of pure oleic acid, right? What's going to happen is that's going to be absorbed, via the chylomicron, system, and turn into chylomicrons go into remnant lipoproteins and VLDL and LDL. And those lipids are going to be shuttled around the body. Some of the liver's going to kind of repackage that, maybe repackage some of those recently absorbed lipids into ketones, into beta hydroxybutyrate, acetoacetate, et cetera, right? Okay, so once that 50 grams of oleic acid is completely absorbed, the body doesn't radioisotope those individual fatty acid molecules to say, those are recently absorbed and all these over here have been here for a while. What's going to happen is some lipids will be utilized to make cellular energy through the process of beta oxidation and through the electron transport chain and Krebs cycle. Some of those lipids might be stored, some might make ketones, right? So again, once the lipids are in the body, how does the body sense this so-called energy deficit independent of hormones? Because here's the thing, we recently did that 3-part series in October, where we talked about, adipocyte lipolysis and the hormonal, hormone-sensitive lipase and various other lipolytic enzymes and things like that will release stored energy from our fat cells, and then how they undergo this process. They, meaning the fat that is recently released, undergoes this process of beta oxidation, how that's ultimately then made into cellular energy in the form of ATP in the Krebs cycle and electron transport chain. And we finished off that video with the idea of glyceroneogenesis and this whole idea that 50% of fat that's released from your fat cells ultimately go back. There's this huge recycling effect. And when we get metabolically inflexible, this so-called fat recycling doesn't occur as well. And so that's the thing. So a 50, or it depends on children versus adults and how metabolically flexible they are and if they have disease or not. But a large percentage of the fat that's released from our adipocytes every day is recycled back into our fat cells. It's just this process that occurs. So how in the heck does the body know, whoa, don't put that fat in this fat cell because, it was recently absorbed from the diet, let's burn it. Or, hey, this fatty acid has been here for 6 months. That was from the ice cream cone and, or Christmas cookies, right? How does the body know? Like, independent of hormones. Again, that's the operative word. I never once would say that the body can't sense energy surpluses or energy deficits. I mean, we know various kinases and hormones, mTOR, AMPK, all these different things at the cellular level. Glucagon and cortisol and noradrenaline and all these hormones affect that. But again, you can't disentangle hormones from the conversation of cellular energy deficits or surpluses. They're intimately connected. And so if we look deep, and we talked about this in video part 3, we talked about citrate and malonyl-CoA within the Krebs cycle. So these are Krebs cycle metabolites. Not only do so when there's an energy surplus, these metabolites will increase and they affect hormonal signaling, and hormonal signaling affect levels of these metabolites. Again, you can't separate them. It's like they're two sides of the same coin. You can't disentangle these things. And so if you look at hormonal effects even if you look at mTOR, even if we look at AMPK and all these intracellular pathways that regulate energy balance or surplus, hormones crosstalk and communicate. So again, that brings back the conversation that, if you eat junk food and a bunch of garbage and are in a calorie deficit, don't expect to have massive shifts in body composition. Because again, you can't disentangle this conversation of hormones versus energy deficits because they're part of the same system. They crosstalk, intercommunicate, and they're intertwined. I don't know how else to freaking say it. And so, VLDL is not doing that. Like, VLDL is influenced by hormones. I mean, give someone insulin and watch their VLDL and remnant lipoproteins and atherogenic lipoproteins. They're going to increase, right? So yeah, there is probably at some level repackaging increases and some, fatty acid transport proteins communicating with, lipoprotein particles, and that may affect energy balance. But again, you can make the argument that hormones will affect the liver synthesis and production and release of and composition of and particle size of, these lipoprotein particles. And so in that video, the Fuckery Friday video, he did talk a lot about the lipoprotein particles, saying that they're a big player. I don't know if I totally am buying that. I wouldn't say that lipoprotein particles and remnants and VLDL are more important than hormones when it comes to energy surpluses or deficits. So again, I don't have all the answers. I'm not trying to talk shit about Layne. I'm just saying that you can't disentangle hormones from the conversation. So that then brings up this idea that I think is a bigger point that we don't really talk about. And it's that in the fitness space, these people have been, taught over and over and over and over, and it's indelibly inked in their head that energy balance is pretty much the only thing that matters. And they've been taught from this professor, it's been on tests, it's been on this. And the parallels I can make, because I've sold stuff to doctors for 13 years. So I've seen how closed-minded doctors are, because when they come out of medical school, in their training, look, I've been a sales rep since 2006. I've been in thousands of clinics all across North America, Canada, all over major cities in the United States. And I've seen doctors, when you say ketosis to a doctor, they automatically think diabetic ketoacidosis. It's very hard. It takes a lot of training for a medically trained professional to realize that there's a difference between nutritional ketosis and metabolic and diabetic ketoacidosis. Two totally different things, right? And so that just made me, when we hear things over and over and over again, it's hard for us to believe that there could be another way. And that brings me up. Maybe you guys don't really know, my story and why I am more of a hormonally biased person. Is I've taken anabolic steroids before. I did 2 pretty big cycles of steroids in college. Man, my body composition changed like overnight. I could eat whatever the hell I wanted and still have shredded abs, straightest anterior, be jacked as hell. Because my hormones were in line, right? I mean, you can't argue it, right? This is why bodybuilders and why these fitness models, they're on Anavar, they're on clenbuterol, they're on these different things, and they're eating, cheesecake, and they're eating pizza, and they're drinking beer, they're doing whatever, and they're still shredded. How do you explain that? Well, hormones play a huge role. So that's one big part of it. The second big part of it is, after college, I was pre-med as an undergrad, worked at a medical clinic with Gerard Guillory in Colorado, and saw a lot of clients as a nutritionist right there. And a lot of clients that I saw were eating 600, 700, 800 calories a day. Very, very low calorie diets. I myself was eating like 4,000 calories, yet I had completely different body fat, more favorable body fat percentage than many of the people I was, consulting with, that they were way overweight. And so I had them do extensive, dietary tracking, would meet with them several days a week. Some of these people were barely eating at all, yet they were gaining weight, right? And some of these people were also on insulin. Some of these people were on prednisone. Some of these people were on antidepressants. So I quickly realized that there's other things that are going on, in this clinical type setting that are affecting body composition independent of hormones. So I started to dive in to do more research. And that's when I wrote the book Belly Fat Effect, because one of the medical assistants at this clinic underwent bariatric surgery. She didn't really change her diet much. Like, she couldn't eat that much right away, but her body composition changed dramatically, and she was still eating kind of not the same food. So I realized that, wow, this microbiome and the gut hormones, and there's so much more going on here that's affecting body composition independent of calories. So anyway, that's where I come from. That's my perspective. I've tried to have an open mind here. I'm not saying I have all the answers. I'm not saying Lane's right. I'm not saying he's wrong. I think down the road, we'll have more metabolomics and proteomics data where we can kind of peek into seeing what the cellular metabolism is doing, and then we can get a little bit more of an accurate insight into what's going on. And continuous energy restriction, aka dieting, how that's different from intermittent energy restriction, also known as intermittent fasting. Like, we're starting to see more head-to-head studies looking at metabolomics and genomics and proteomics there. So appreciate you tuning into this video. My dog is barking. I think the Amazon guy's here, but we'll catch you on a future episode down the road. If you enjoyed this conversation, hit that like button. I'll be following the comments below, and we'll talk to you soon. Bye, guys.